Hello and welcome to part 2 of HTML Basics. I am Jeff LaBeouf, and in this video we're going to discuss the proper structure for an HTML page. We're also going to discuss the difference between, a lot of different elements, the simple elements that are available in HTML, and the difference between them. So I have an HTML file here in a program called Dreamweaver. Now I'm going to use Dreamweaver for these videos, but you can use Notepad or Notepad++, and there are other text editors that are available, some for purchase and others for free. So the first thing I need to do is save this file. And if you remember from the last video, an HTML file is just a text file with the extension .html. I've created a root folder called Web Basics, and I'm saving my index.html there. Okay. And it shows up in my Files menu. So the first line of type that I have here is called my doc type. This declares what version of the HTML standard I'm using. So for this file, I'm going to use HTML version 5. So HTML5, this is the simple doc type that's used in that. If you are not familiar with the different standards of HTML, it's sort of like in applications they come out with different iterations, they make different improvements, and the same happens with the HTML standard. So the latest version is HTML5, and you'll see it being used more often as the web browsers become more advanced and web browser vendors adopt the standard. So the doc type just defines what version of HTML you're using. And then we start with an HTML tag. Okay. So this is a standard HTML tag, and it surrounds content. Everything in your web page will be inside the HTML tags, the start tag and the end tag. Then we have a head and a body. So we call this the standard, or the HTML skeleton. So the skeleton has a head and a body. The head tag describes information about your page. And there I've inserted a comment. That's the syntax for a comment. So information about your page. And in the head tag right now I have two tags, a meta tag, which contains some simple metadata and meta tag information, metadata, and a title tag. So the title tag is usually found inside the head. That's the proper place for it. And this is the title of our page. So let's call this Food Report. Okay. Now notice nothing shows up on our screen. On the right hand side I have a display, and this will render a preview of our page. But right now we don't see anything, even though I've written Food Report for our title. The title tag does not display on screen. It doesn't display in the body of your web browser. Instead, it displays in the tab. So let me save this file, and we will preview it in Internet Explorer, and we'll see this result. There we go. So we have a blank body here. There's no information in the body of our web page, but in our tab we have the words Food Report. That is where the title tag displays. And again, that's the reason why it goes in the head, inside the head tags, because it's not displayed in the body of our web browser. If I wanted Food Report to actually display In the main body, I would have to write it inside the body tags. And there we have food report. Of course, I would use additional tags to provide more structure. So if this is the main heading that I want displayed on screen, I would use H1. Now there's sometimes some confusion about headings and title, so it's important to start to adopt the terminology. Sometimes we might call this the title of our page. If we were writing a paper, we might put the title at the top, but the title tag does not mean this. This is the heading, or the top level heading, or the primary heading on the page. So we would use the H1 tag. Now there are 6 levels of headings. There's H1, H2, oops, sorry about that, H3, all the way down through 4, 5, and the last one is H6. And you can see that the browser will render each one a little different. And what we see here is that they're a little smaller. But remember, when you use markup, don't use it for presentational purposes. It's meant to be used for structure. And let's talk about that. Finally, we have the P tag. You can see that's actually bigger than the H6. Okay, so what do I mean by structure? If we were writing a paper called Food Report, most English teachers would probably have you start, or suggest that you start with an outline. So let's do that. I'm going to write my paper here in Microsoft Word. Okay, so Food Report. Let's start off with an outline. There we go. So, first, main topics. Under Food Report, I'm going to talk, I could write about supermarket food. We could also write about restaurant food. There we go. There's two primary topics. Now under supermarkets, we could discuss the different supermarket chains. So in my area we have Price Chopper, we have Shaw's, and Stop and Shop. Oops. There we go. Under restaurants, let's put everyone's favorite, McDonald's, and Burger King, and Wendy's. Fine restaurants there. Okay. So these represent the different topics that we would write about in our paper. So Price Chopper, there might be a paragraph that goes in after that. Same thing about Shaw's and Stop and Shop. So those paragraphs would contain all of my main ideas and supportive information about those topics. And then when I was done writing about supermarkets, I would start writing about restaurant foods. And then I would write a paragraph about McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's in that series. I'd probably have some kind of a conclusion at the end as well. And the conclusion wouldn't be related to either one topic, it would be for my entire paper. Oops. There we go. Okay, so this serves as my outline for my paper. Now if I were to translate this into HTML, I would need to identify the structure here. This first title or main heading, this represents the main heading on my paper, so this would actually be an H1. Supermarket foods is pretty simple to extrapolate here. This should be H2. Now Price Chopper is actually H3 because it is a subheading of supermarket foods. When I get to Shaw's, some students have said that this should be H4, but that's technically not correct. This is actually H3 also. And the reason why it's H3 is because it is a subheading of supermarket foods. It is not a subheading of Price Chopper. Now, if I needed to write extra things about Price Chopper, like its deli section, and deli section, frozen foods, and fish, then I could possibly get into H4 territory there. But the Shaw's and the Stop and Shop are actually both H3s because they're of the same level as Price Chopper. Restaurant foods, now what is this? This is of the same level as supermarket foods, so this is also H2. McDonald's is a subheading of restaurant foods, so it would be H3. Burger King, H3, and Wendy's, H3. These are all subheadings of restaurant foods. Conclusion is not a subheading of restaurant food. It's actually at the same level as supermarket and restaurant food, and it is a subheading of food report. That makes it an H2. Okay, so let's copy this. This is our structure, and we're going to jump over here to the body of our web page and paste. So when I did this, it gave me some information that's going to be a pain to edit out. So let's go back here. We'll turn off this outlining. Copy it again and paste. There we go. So this currently previews as just plain text. Again, HTML is case insensitive. I'm sorry, it is case insensitive, but it is space insensitive, which means that spaces, returns, and tabs all display as a single space. So even though I have this list of items here and I hit return after each one, it displays in a single line of type. So food report, we said was H1. Supermarket foods, we said it was H2. And as I start to preview, I can see the structure beginning to come out. Now notice that when I created this H1 and H2, it started a new line. And the reason for that is because these heading tags are what are called block level tags. So there's two kinds of elements. There is block elements and inline elements. Block elements always start on a new line, whereas inline elements do not. Okay, let me just shorten this. Give you a quick example of what I'm talking about. Finish marking this up. Okay, Stop and Shop, supermarket foods, restaurant foods, which 3. 3. And we'll just shorten this now. Okay. So what we're going to do here is put an introduction paragraph. And then I can use some inline tags to describe the difference between inline and block. This is my food report. It's pretty awesome. Okay. So p tag is also a block element, and it always starts on a new line. So even if I pressed enter here, it's still going to display on one line. Again, because the spaces are not spaces, returns, and tabs are always treated as one space, and it's the p tag that's actually defining the start and end of my paragraph. Now an inline tag would be one that I can nest inside of a block level tag, or yes, a block level tag, but it's not going to start on a new line. So if I wanted to make pretty, if I wanted to emphasize the word pretty, I could use the em tag for emphasize. It's pretty awesome. Okay. Now notice it's rendered in italic. Now we could use another tag to make something italic, but when you think about it, why would you make something italic? Usually because you want to place some emphasis on it. So it actually makes more sense, it makes more semantic sense to use the em tag instead of the I tag. The I tag is for presentation, and we are trying not to use HTML for presentation. We're using it for structure. We can use CSS for presentation. Now the same thing goes for bold. Sometimes we want to make something bold, and why do we want to do that? Usually because we want it to stand out. So we would call that strong. And there we go. We can see it displays in bold, but it is it's stronger on screen. It shows up a little bit better. Now we can nest inline tags. Nesting means put them inside of another tag. So the em tag is technically nested inside the p tag, and all of that is nested inside the body tag, which is again nested inside the HTML tag. So tags inside of tags. Now what if I wanted to make the word awesome emphasized as well as strong? I can do that. I just want to wrap the em tag around the strong tags. There we go. Pretty awesome. So I'm told that when you use em and strong tags instead of the italic and bold tags, you can even get better results with things like text-to-speech readers. So if anyone is using software to read your site, maybe somebody with visual impairment, or maybe even with a new reader on a mobile device, it will actually some of these text-to-speech readers will actually change the way the word is said when it encounters the em tag, the way the word is pronounced. The same with the strong tag, like it might say it louder or change the pitch a little bit. So it gives some kind of a context, which is really useful. So I think that concludes our video about structure. So it's important to understand that the H tags, the EM, and the strong are really just a way to describe this content with context. So a lot of the English language, a lot of any language, human communication has to do with the context. So if we say things to someone else or write a message to someone, we're using words, but those individual words have different meanings depending on how they're placed together and where they are on a printed page. So for example, food report, those two words are not as meaningful, but when we wrap them in the H1 tag, then we define them as a heading. So that's how we provide structure.